This is my 1973 Toyota HiLux I got about a year ago, bone stock, and turned into this four-wheel drive V8 monster. But today, we're tackling something a little bit different. We're jumping into cosmetics, and we're gonna see how well we can shine up this paint and detail it for the first time in probably 20 years. It's a super satisfying one, so stick around to the end so you can see the final results. It has been about a week and a half we've had the HiLux done, and we're about to do something I've been wanting to do for about a year with this truck. We're gonna go buy a buffer, buff the paint, and hopefully get this thing looking a ton better. It doesn't look terrible aside from the mud that's flung up because these tires are incredibly offset, but the paint is super chalky. You can see even on the hood, I have not wiped this cowl down ever, and there's just so much chalky buildup on everything. The hood got wiped down, but the cowl didn't, the fenders didn't, the roof didn't, the doors didn't, the bed didn't. So I wanna get this thing looking good. I've never buffed paint, I've never polished paint, I've never waxed a car. I've never been one to care about aesthetics, but this thing just looks so good. I can't not try to make it look better, not try to make the paint at least a little shiny. So we're gonna run to Harbor Freight. We're gonna get a super cheap and affordable buffer. We're gonna get some buffing compound, and we're gonna make this thing pop. First thing in the morning, it was about 10 degrees last night. Let's see how this thing cold starts. Like a dream, like a dream. I got myself a polisher, some polishing pads, and some microfiber cloths. I was told by a friend of mine that the polishing compounds at Harbor Freight are a little expensive, so I'm actually headed to Walmart to hopefully get some decent polishing compounds for a decent price. After doing a little more research and talking to some more people, I was told not to use a polisher because it might eat through the single stage paint because it's real soft, and to not use polishing compound because it might eat through the paint. So we're gonna start by washing it real good and then waxing it and see how things look from there. All right, we gotta figure out what we're gonna get. First thing first, I wanna grab a bucket, $2.75, sounds great. I want a cheap wash, $7, sounds fantastic. All right, now I want some sort of wax. Here is a container of wax. Looks good, we're gonna just go with that. Now I want a sponge to wash everything down with. This looks like it'll be a good sponge. And finally, I want an applicator for our wax. Sweet. We're home. It's time to bust out the power washer, see how we can get this thing cleaned up. We got a ton of stuff to wash. There's mud all over everything because it's snowy and muddy outside. It's currently about 35 degrees, so it's above freezing, so the power washer shouldn't freeze while we're using it. And hopefully we make this thing look a little bit better. I'd like it to look a ton better, but I'm hoping for a little bit better, a little bit of shine back into it, and I'll be pumped. I got the power washer out, but unfortunately it's been so cold, this hose has not had a drip come out of it. So I've got the heater going in the garage. I'm gonna take the hose in. Hopefully it'll thaw out rather quickly. We shall see how this works. Got the heater blasting onto it. We'll give it 20 minutes or so. I kind of figured this might be an issue trying to wash a car in the middle of winter, but all of you guys really want to see the HiLux shined up, and I'd really like to do that because I also think it would look amazing. Finally got the hose off, so we've got some water that we can actually wash with. So I'm gonna go ahead, fire up the power washer. As soon as I started washing the truck, I could immediately see how much of a difference was being made with just the power washer. Not just the mud washing off the body, but the chalky paint as well, and the entire thing turning a whole different shade of blue. It was very satisfying to see, and I'm excited to see what this thing looks like fully shined up. Power wash, this thing looks a ton better already. I am super stoked, but we're about to start getting down and dirty with a bucket, some soap, and a sponge, and we're gonna wash this whole thing down. And keep in mind, every single thing I know about detailing, every last bit, I learned this morning via Google or calling friends and asking them, and none of them are professional detailers, so I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to detailing cars. I am just trying to wash this thing up, make it look a little bit better, and hopefully give it some shine back. I'm trying to do it for cheap, And if I don't use the polisher, I'll be all into this about 50 bucks. I'm gonna see if I can get this thing a little bit of shine. Of course, I choose the winter to learn how to wash cars. Aside from the extremely cold temperatures, this part of the process was actually fairly smooth. Wiped every single panel down with the sponge, then again with a wet microfiber to rinse it, and finally with a dry microfiber so that we could get it as dry as possible. Just for fun, I only did half of the roof. This is how chalky all the paint was. Like, that's crazy. This thing's gonna look so much better, and this isn't even with the wax yet. Unfortunately, getting this up close and personal with all of the paint revealed a ton of imperfections that I honestly had never noticed before. In spite of that, I make sure I get every single surface as clean as possible, most importantly, the tailgate. Shoo buddy, that thing looks so much better already. I'm gonna go ahead and call it, we're done washing it. I'm gonna move it inside, that way we can wax it inside and see a good before and after, but already looks so much better just with a proper wash. We're gonna pull this thing in very, very slowly so we don't kick up anything onto the paint, because that is the last thing we want after spending this much time washing it.
How you feeling, Tuck? How you feeling, Tucker? How about you, Doc? Are you excited to see the transformation? You're a spaz.
We got this thing inside, and that's serving a couple purposes. One, we have a heater inside, so we can actually warm ourselves up. Two, we got lights in here, so we can actually see what we're doing. But even after just washing it, it looks so much better. You can see reflections of light in the paint. You can see a couple issues, and everyone that's probably mad saying that I was ruining a perfect paint job, there is not a single place on this truck that doesn't have runs or chips or scrapes or old mirrors that got pulled off and new mirrors that got bolted on, everything. This thing is far from perfect. This thing is probably never going to be perfect, but I do love how it's turning out, and I think it is the ultimate Toyota HiLux. We're gonna do with what we can. We're gonna make this thing awesome. I wanna use it, I wanna off-road it, I wanna tow with it, I wanna travel with it. And when you have something that's got like perfect paint, you're always gonna be anxious about that. And if you have something that's just in perfect condition, you wanna keep it that way. If you have something that's good enough and works well, I don't know. I'm just stoked. I can't wait to see this thing with a nice front bumper, some rock sliders, maybe a winch, a rear bumper, a tire carrier, who knows? I want to outfit this thing to be a super sweet truck, and I don't think it'll mind any of the weight. So I'm actually going to start on the roof, and the reason I'm going to start on the roof is because now that this thing's four-wheel drive, it's pretty tall up here. Like, I can't stand up in the bed tall. So no one's gonna see this near as much as they will a door or a bedside or something like that. I think this will be a great place to figure out what I'm doing, practice, and see exactly what needs to happen to make this look decent. Same as the soap, I'm literally just reading the directions and then following them as best as possible. We're gonna do this half and see how it looks compared to this half. Well, I did a very small portion of the roof, and there is a very noticeable difference. This is gonna look so much better. At this point, we had already had our hands on every single panel on the truck, but this was by far the most tedious part of the process. The instructions said to let the wax dry before wiping it off with a clean rag, so I just moved on to the next panel, and then when I was done waxing the next panel, I figured I could move back and wipe the first one. I kept this methodology going for the entirety of the truck, doing one panel with wax and then wiping the last one clean, and it seemed to work out really well. I'd wipe until the rag I was using was completely coated in wax, and then I would go ahead and grab a new one to try and keep the surface as clean as possible and looking as good as possible. By the time I got to the second half of the truck, my hands were starting to cramp, and I was no longer really enjoying this process, but I was gonna see it through, and I wanted to make sure we got this thing as shined up as I could possibly make it. I even spent the extra time on the tailgate to make sure that the Toyota really popped, because that's one of my favorite features of this truck. It looks so good. You can see some shine in all the paint. All in all, this is a huge improvement. I think it looks fantastic. I don't think this is something I'm gonna keep up with or do on like a regular basis, because let's face it, the second I drive it down the almost mile of wet dirt roads that I live down, it's gonna be completely and totally covered in mud again. But I think it was worth it to see it shined up, even for just a minute, see what this thing actually holds, and hopefully with the layer of wax I put on there, the mud and dirt won't stick to it quite as bad, and it'll hold its shine for a little bit longer. I had never waxed paint, but you know what's really cool? Water actually beads off of this 50-year-old truck. That's really cool. It's completely beaded up. It's not soaking in anywhere. And then a very gentle wipe of the cloth, and it's back to looking good again. This thing will actually do things that nice cars do. Not very well, but it'll do it. It's the next morning. I haven't seen this thing all night, and holy cow, walking into the garage, this thing pops so much more than I thought it was last night. I guess since I did it all and saw the slow steps from really chalky to shiny, it was kind of hard for me to appreciate how much better the paint looks, how much brighter it is, how much shinier it is. Not only that, but it feels smoother, and there's no chalky residue when you touch it. So now I can touch the door and there's no chalky residue, and there's not a bunch of fingerprints where I shut the door. And it just, all in all, it needed this. On a truck like this, it's probably deserved to get a wash and a wax at least once every 6 months. Now we're gonna go ahead. I popped the hood last night. I want to check the oil, check the coolant. I've started making a list of everything I want to fix on this thing. There is a local car show in about a week and a half, and I want this thing to be a lot more dialed in, looking a lot better, and working proper before the car show. This thing has functioned really well so far. I put about 160 miles on it, I believe, so far since I did the swap. And in that 160 miles, I've had no major issues. Since it's all shiny and looking good, I want to take it back to the spot I took some photos of it when it was first finished. I want to take some more photos, see how it looks, and I think in natural light it'll pop even more. What's unfortunate about where I'm at is I've got about a mile of dirt road. I mean, I have not exceeded 14 miles an hour for this entire drive, which speed limit's 25, by the way. And I can already see mud on the hood. Let's see what this thing looks like. Yep. I mean, at least it's beating off. But there is water, mud, splash up everywhere. It still looks better, still looks shinier. That's why when I say I don't really wash my cars super often, that's a big reason why. When you live down a mile of dirt road, you could wash it every single day, and especially in the springtime when the snow is melting, you're never gonna have it clean. It is windy as all get out, but we're back here where I filmed the original intro to this video to see what kind of difference it actually makes for this thing to be in some natural light with some wax. I'm stoked with how this thing is coming out, and I cannot wait to actually use this thing. But it is currently about 25 degrees and there are like 30-mile-an-hour winds, so I'm gonna head back. We're gonna return this buffer that we ended up not using in the buff pads. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I can't wait to catch you next week.